Simon Jordan is wrong about Anthony Joshua. Now, over the years, Simon Jordan has said things about Joshua that I think is factually wrong when you think about it from a boxing point of view. Now, it's either Simon is hating on Joshua or Simon doesn't know exactly what he's talking about when he talks about boxing, or it's both. So look, I'm going to flip my screen. Let's have a listen to what Simon Jordan says in his interview on TalkSport, and you had a number of people on this panel. And then we can talk about this further as we, sort of dissect why I think Simon is wrong in this situation. Have a listen to this.
I've always been moderately critical for whatever right I do or don't have to observe on Anthony Joshua. I've always talked about Tyson Fury being the better fighter. And looked at Anthony Joshua and often said that I felt he was a flat-track bully. When you look at Anthony in his career, and Spencer asked you what you thought of it, has he got the kind of record that you would anticipate he would have gotten to have gotten 2 world titles? Because when you look at it, I look at Eric Molina, I look at Dominic Brazil, I look at Klitschko, not the Klitschko that Tyson fought in 2015, but a much older Klitschko. And I look at the performances against Ruiz and the navigation of the fight against Joseph Parker that I went to in Cardiff, which was a snooze fest. The referee made it that way to some extent. Do you look at that and go, well, that's a stellar career that kind of gives you the cachet of being the golden boy of British boxing, 2-time heavyweight champion of the world? Does it jump out to you like that, or am I being a bit unfair?
So basically, Simon is questioning Anthony Joshua's achievement, his career, and the things that he's done in boxing. And I think it's really wrong because he said that Anthony Joshua is a flat track bully. He's basically questioning whether Anthony Joshua merits this title of being a golden boy of British boxing and the things that he's done in boxing. And I think it's pretty wrong. So what is a flat track bully? And as you can see here, a flat track bully is an athlete that dominates, against weaker opponents, but consistently fails to perform against top tier competition or in challenging environments. So basically, Simon is saying that Anthony Joshua only beats weaker opponents, but then when it comes to fighting top tier opponents, that Joshua loses all those fights. But I would argue differently. I would argue that it is actually the opposite. Because when we look at Anthony Joshua, Joshua is someone that came to the sport quite late. So Joshua came to boxing maybe 18, 19. When you look at other fighters in the division, in the heavyweight division, some of these guys have been boxing since they're like age 9 or 6 or 7. So if you look at Anthony Joshua and how he's gone on to become a 2-time heavyweight champion and defended his belt and brought a lot of things into British boxing, Joshua should not be doing the things that he's done. If you look at his ability as a boxer, because there are other boxers in the division that are better than Joshua when it comes to boxing. But what I can see is that Joshua has achieved more than almost every single fighter in the division currently, apart from Usyk, when we talk about resume and the fact that Usyk is the greatest fighter of this generation, right? When it comes to the heavyweight. So I think it's wrong for Simon to say that Joshua is a flat track bully when actually Joshua should not be where he is. I think Joshua has overachieved. And the reason why Joshua has overachieved is because he's got superior natural ability, he's got power in his hands, and his athleticism is incredible. And that is something that has bailed Joshua out. Because when you think about it, Joshua should be losing to a lot of fighters on his resume. Now, when we look at Joshua's box rec here and we look at Joshua's record, we can see that Dillian Whyte was the fight that sort of put Joshua on the map, right? He beat Dillian Whyte and it became a big thing, and then Joshua went on to achieve a lot of things. But when you look at it here, I don't think that Joshua versus Dillian Whyte, there was much difference between both of them, because Dillian Whyte had beaten Anthony Joshua in the amateurs. Like, Dillian Whyte was coming into that fight with a lot of confidence because he's beaten Anthony Joshua. So Joshua wasn't any better than Dillian Whyte if you look at it on paper, because Dillian Whyte, as I said, had the upper hand in the amateurs, and Joshua wasn't someone that had the best amateur background. As I explained before, he came to the sport late. So this is someone that is sort of overachieving. So he beats Dillian Whyte, and of course, there's always questions about the Charles Martin fight, because let's be honest, Charles Martin is not a credible heavyweight champion, and he held the belt, he had the belt, and Joshua had to beat Charles Martin to win the belt. It wasn't like they manufactured Charles Martin to be in that position for Joshua to fight him. Charles Martin happened to be someone that had the world championship belts, and Joshua had to fight him. And then he defended against Dominic Brazil. Now, Dominic Brazil is not, a top fighter. He's a decent fighter, but it is a title defense. He had to, take on his mandatory. He had to take on his responsibility as a heavyweight world champion. And that's exactly what he did. Now, Eric Molina is also in the same camp. Not the best fighter, not a very good fighter, a decent fighter. But once again, Joshua had to defend his mandatories and he had to, take his duties as a world champion. And that's what he did. Now we look at the Klitschko fight, and Simon is trying to take some credit away from Joshua against Klitschko. In all actuality, Joshua should be losing to Vladimir Klitschko. He should be, because look at it. Vladimir Klitschko reigned the heavyweight division for 10 years, a lot of experience, great amateur background, experience from fighting so many different styles. Like Anthony Joshua versus Vladimir Klitschko should be a win for Vladimir Klitschko, although Klitschko was old, but you could argue that Klitschko could have beat Anthony Joshua on points and won that fight, because once again, Joshua doesn't have the best boxing ability. He doesn't have the best amateur background. Yes, he's an Olympic gold medalist, but look at all the other fighters that have been boxing from a younger age compared to Anthony Joshua. So Klitschko should have been beating Anthony Joshua. Tyson Fury fought Klitschko maybe a year before Anthony Joshua fought him, but I don't think that Klitschko was any worse in that fight than he was in the Tyson Fury fight. If anything, I think Klitschko was better conditioned. Klitschko, was more motivated to win the world title again, because he lost his title against Tyson Fury. So I don't think that Anthony Joshua should be beating Vladimir Klitschko here. So I think Joshua overachieved in that Klitschko fight. And then he defended the title against Carlos Takam. Now, that was a good fight, decent fight. When it comes to Joseph Parker, once again, if you look at Anthony Joshua's background and the fact that he started or he came to the sport late, Anthony Joshua should not be beating a guy like Joseph Parker. Let's be honest. Like, Joseph Parker is a really good boxer. I think fundamentally, Joseph Parker at that time was a better boxer than Anthony Joshua. Anthony Joshua had more power. He had more presence. His athleticism was really good and his natural ability was fantastic. But Joseph Parker, for me, in that fight, was the better boxer fundamentally. So how is Anthony Joshua able to beat a guy that should beat him? Because Joseph Parker, in my opinion, is a better boxer. So I think Joshua overachieved in that fight against Joseph Parker. And then you look at the likes of Alexander Povetkin. Now, this is a dangerous fighter in Alexander Povetkin. Everybody that knows Povetkin knows that he was a really dangerous fighter. And guess what? Anthony Joshua defeated Povetkin in a fight that, going into this fight, a lot of people were picking Povetkin to upset Anthony Joshua because of his pedigree, because of his amateur background, because of the fact that he hits hard and he's a dangerous fighter and he fights low, and Joshua always struggles with shorter fighters. But Joshua got rid of Povetkin with ease. And then, of course, the Andy Ruiz fight, which, let's be honest, if we think about it, right, if you're going to be honest about it, Andy Ruiz has been boxing from the age of 6 or 7. Andy Ruiz has more boxing experience than Anthony Joshua. Andy Ruiz, in all actuality, should be beating Anthony Joshua, because I think Ruiz has certain advantages, as he showed in the first fight, that he can beat Anthony Joshua. And he did it. And then Joshua fought Ruiz the second time, and Joshua overachieved, because if Ruiz was anyone that was serious about boxing, then Ruiz would have trained, come in as a professional and beat Anthony Joshua the second time. But what we saw was Joshua beating Andy Ruiz and fighting a way that he's never fought before. Joshua had never fought on the back foot. Joshua is not a back foot fighter. So Joshua was able to beat Andy Ruiz fighting on the back foot, adapting to a different style that is normally not what he does in boxing. So in my opinion, Anthony Joshua overachieved in that fight. And then you talk about Kubrat Pulev, good fighter, decent amateur background. Joshua beats him there. That's a good fight. That's a good win. And then, of course, the 2 Alexander Usyk fight. Now, there's no shame in losing to Alexander Usyk. Alexander Usyk is the best fighter of this generation and probably the best fighter that we've seen in a very, very long time when it comes to the heavyweight division. And, Anthony Joshua lost to him. So there's no shame in losing to him. And then, of course, you got the Jermaine Franklin and Robert Helenius, but these are not world title defenses. So as you can see there, for me, when we look at Anthony Joshua's record, Anthony Joshua has overachieved given the fact that he came into the sport late. Now, one thing that Simon mentioned, that he believes that Tyson Fury is a better boxer than Anthony Joshua. I 100% agree with Simon on that. Tyson Fury is a much better boxer than Anthony Joshua. Tyson Fury moves well, his footwork is really good, his boxing IQ is really good. Tyson Fury is a much slicker boxer. He can fight on the front foot, he can fight on the back foot. Tyson Fury is a better boxer than Anthony Joshua. There is no debate about that. However, the interesting thing between Anthony Joshua and Tyson Fury is that you have to look at both fighters from what they've achieved in the boxing ring. And as you can see here, this is Anthony Joshua's successful title defenses. Anthony Joshua has 8 successful title defenses. Now remember, Tyson Fury is a better boxer than Anthony Joshua. There's no argument there. And then we can look at what Tyson Fury has done when it comes to his title defenses. Tyson Fury has had 3 successful title defenses. So we're comparing 8 to 3 successful title defenses. So when Simon Jordan sits there and he doesn't understand why Anthony Joshua is touted to be the golden child of British boxing and all these things, I don't understand it. It's either Simon is genuinely just hating on Anthony Joshua, or Simon just does not know what he's talking about when it comes to boxing and how to break things down, because the golden standard in boxing has been set already. We look up to guys that have been there, that have achieved a lot of things in boxing. And when you look at this, right, you look at this here. This is Larry Holmes having the most successful title defenses. Muhammad Ali has 19 title defenses. Lennox Lewis has 14 title defenses. Mike Tyson has 10. And then as you can see here, it talks about it in conservatively title defense streaks. And, Mike Tyson and Lennox Lewis are tied on that. So when you look at all of that and you compare Anthony Joshua having 8 to Tyson Fury having 3, on paper, if you're going to be honest and we're going to lean towards truth and what boxing is all about, Anthony Joshua has achieved a little bit more than Tyson Fury, although Tyson Fury is the much better boxer when you compare both of them. Anthony Joshua was the reason why British boxing is the way it is now, because of the money that he brought into the sport. I remember there were times where fighters in British boxing were not making a lot of money. Joshua normalized stadium fights, fighting at the O2, fighting at the Principality, bringing a lot of sponsors into British boxing, and then fighters on the undercard started making money, and then fights went to other places, and then fighters started making a lot of money for themselves. Now, as a boxing fan, I've always said that I want to see boxers make a lot of money, because boxing is a very dangerous sport. So Anthony Joshua being able to do what he did in the sport has given other fighters in the sport as we speak right now to make a lot of money. And a lot of the fighters will attest to this. They will tell you that since Joshua, became a star in British boxing, there's been a lot of money and fighters have made a lot of money as well. So Simon Jordan, I think, is wrong when he sits there and he talks about Anthony Joshua being a flat track bully and basically questioning Anthony Joshua's stardom and the things that he's done for British boxing. I think Simon is just wrong. And as I said, either Simon doesn't know exactly what he talks about when it comes to boxing, or he's just hating on Anthony Joshua, or it's just two of the things that I've just mentioned. Because I don't think that you could say that, given the things that Joshua has achieved in boxing and the fact that he came to the sport late. So Joshua should not be achieving what he's achieved. He's actually overachieved and deserves credit for that. Now, what Joshua does outside of the ring is absolutely, something that people want to talk about. This video is not about what Joshua said in the press conference or has said when he's out there. No. This is about boxing, what he's achieved factually that we can pinpoint on paper, because Simon is comparing Anthony Joshua to Tyson Fury. But what we can see is that Anthony Joshua has had a more successful career on paper than Tyson Fury. So guys, get in the comment section and let me know what you think about Simon Jordan claiming that Anthony Joshua is a flat track bully and basically questioning whether Anthony Joshua deserved the title of Golden Boy of British boxing and the things that he's achieved in the sport. Get in the comment section and let me know what you think about this.